He stopped when he saw her. Blood ran down her hand and darkened the wood at the edge of his land. She stood there, swaying, eyes hard, daring him to move first. He didn't. The moment stayed open, tight, waiting to break. Neither of them breathed. Time felt thin there. "You hurt?" he asked, voice flat. She shook her head. "I said don't touch me." She leaned and almost fell. "Then don't fall," he said. His eyes never left hers. The line between them held. It felt like a test. She passed by standing. Still. Quiet. Hurting. Waiting. Watching. Him. She laughed, short and mean. "You gonna turn me in?" He looked at the blood again. "For what?" She waited for more. Nothing came. Silence pushed in around them. She felt it press her chest. He finally said, "Say your name." The request cut clean. Simple. Sharp. Final. Honest. Dangerous. She swallowed hard. "If I do, you'll know." He nodded. "I already know something's wrong." The truth sat between them. Her legs shook. Memory burned. She tasted iron. "My name is—" She stopped. Fear rose. He lifted a hand. Not to stop. To end. "Come inside." The door opened. Waiting. She stared at him. He didn't blink. The house behind him stayed dark. She stepped forward. Blood marked each step. Wood creaked. He didn't help. Didn't rush. When she crossed the line, he closed the door. The sound landed. Safe. Unsafe. She held the latch. Her fingers shook. He waited. Inside smelled clean. Empty. No warmth. No welcome. Just walls. A table. A sink. He pointed. "Sit." She did. He grabbed cloth. "Water." "You don't gotta, I know." He cleaned the cut. Firm. Careful. No softness. "You live alone?" "Most days." The answer hung. He tied it tight. Done. Quiet. "You married?" she asked. He paused. "Once." "She die?" "She left." "That worse?" He shrugged. "Depends who you ask." The room stayed still. She waited. He turned away. She watched his back. "You gonna ask about my name?" He shook his head. "No, why?" "Because you already paid for it." The words landed heavy. She laughed. It cracked. He handed her a shirt. Clean. Plain. Bathroom's there. She took it. Their hands brushed. He pulled back. Fast. Like burned. She went to change. The room stayed silent. He stood alone. Listening. The house held breath. Her name echoed. Unsaid. Alive. Fabric slid off. She froze. The drawer stood open. Inside sat a badge. Old. Scratched. Sheriff's. Her pulse jumped. He appeared behind her. "You law?" she asked. "Not anymore." "You still carry it." "I keep things I bury." The badge felt heavy. Watching. Judging. Silent. Dangerous. She closed the drawer. "That badge scares me." He nodded. "It should." "You scare me?" He met her eyes. "No, why?" "Because you're still here." Outside, a truck slowed. Gravel popped. Sound crept close. She moved toward the back. He didn't stop her. Headlights slid across walls. Silence pressed hard. They waited. Together. Listening. The truck passed. Sound faded. She breathed. He stayed still. "They looking for me," she said. "I figured." "You gonna send me out?" "No, why?" "Because you crossed already." The meaning settled. She sat. He leaned against the wall. Distance kept. Choice made. Neither smiled. Neither moved. The house held. Night crept but never named. She wrapped the shirt tight. "You ain't asking. I ain't prying. People die over my name." He looked tired. "People die over lies too." She nodded. Truth stayed locked. The door stood shut. The line held. Shelter given. Cost unknown. She stayed. He let her. She sat on the bed. He stood outside. Silence stretched. Memory crawled. Her hand hurt. Her chest hurt. "You hungry?" he asked. She shook. Later. He left. She lay back. Stared up. Ceiling bare. No photos. No past. Just now. Her name burned. The house listened. Waiting. Holding. Still. Awake. He stood at the sink. Washed blood. Watched it swirl. The badge waited. He didn't touch. "Why her?" he whispered. No answer. He dried hands. Walked back. She slept? No. Eyes open. "Doors locked," he said. She nodded. Trust thin. Real. Heavy. He turned off the light. Darkness stayed. Quiet. Time slowed. She listened. Every sound felt sharp. He sat outside. Guarding. Not touching. The line remained. Inside. Outside. Safe. Unsafe. Her name stayed buried. Spoken once. Heard. Enough. She closed her eyes. He didn't move. The house held. Breath shared. Silence deep. Waiting. For morning. For cost. For truth. She slept light. Dreams cut. He listened. Dawn waited. The door stayed shut. Her hand stayed near latch. If needed. If run. He stayed close. Not near. The choice sat. Shelter given. Questions gone. A name spoken. Weight carried. He paid. Already. The house didn't ask. It watched. Held. Silent. Morning pressed pale. She woke. The door still closed. Her hand rested. He stood there. "You staying?" She nodded. "For now." He opened the door. Light slipped. Threshold waited. Blood dried. Name burned. He stepped back. She stayed. Choice made. Shelter sealed. Silence shared. The house held. Them. Both. Still. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The room was plain. Clean. Empty enough to feel watched without anyone standing there. He gestured to a chair. She lowered herself slowly, her hand still trembling from the cut. He moved to the sink, grabbed a cloth, dampened it in cold water, and turned back. No words. Just action. The water dripped on the floor. She flinched at the sound. He noticed. Didn't comment. Didn't stop. She let him clean the wound. Fast. Precise. Not gentle, not cruel. Just efficient. You live alone? She asked finally, voice low. He didn't look at her. Most days. She nodded. Let it sit. You married? He shook his head slightly. Once. She die? He didn't answer at first. Then, she left. She swallowed. That worse? He shrugged. Depends who you ask. She wanted more. A story. A question. Nothing came. The silence pressed, heavy but not threatening. She realized she could tell him nothing, and he wouldn't pry. That was new. Dangerous. Comforting in a way that made her chest ache. She adjusted on the chair, careful not to touch the bloodied fabric of her shirt. You gonna ask about my name? His hands froze for a moment over the bandage. Then, know why? Because you already paid for it. The words hit harder than she expected. She laughed, short and bitter. Paid? He didn't answer. Just pressed the cloth over the cut, tied the bandage tightly. Done. She stared at him, waiting for something: anger, pity, judgment. Nothing came. His eyes didn't flicker. They stayed steady, calm, as if the act itself was enough. She noticed the room as she waited. No photos. No clutter. A kitchen table with 2 chairs. A single drawer in the wall. She wondered what he kept there. One badge. A relic from a life she didn't know but sensed. Authority buried behind walls. Power held in silence. She thought of the street outside. Gravel, trucks, eyes. Danger came often to her. But here, in this space, there was just stillness. He moved to the dresser. From it, he pulled a plain shirt. Clean. Neutral. Change. She took it, fingers brushing his briefly. He didn't react. He let her go. When she pulled it over her head, the drawer caught her attention again. The badge rested inside. Sheriff. Old. Scuffed. Dangerous. She closed the drawer, uneasy. He didn't comment. Didn't ask if she saw. Didn't need to. He controlled the space, she controlled her truth. You don't eat? She asked, voice trembling. Later, he said. No more explanation. She accepted it. Hunger didn't matter here. Nothing mattered outside what she could survive. And survive she would. He wouldn't ask. She wouldn't tell. Both understood the balance. Minutes stretched. The cut stung as blood dried beneath the bandage. She shifted, trying to get comfortable. He sat across from her finally, still. Watching. Not interfering. Not speaking. The house itself seemed alive, listening. Walls creaked. Floors sighed under quiet weight. Silence was no longer empty. It held meaning. Promise. Threat. Sanctuary. You sleep much? She asked, testing. Some. He didn't elaborate. She leaned back, letting the quiet wrap around her. The air smelled faintly of wood and dust. Safe. Unsafe. She realized she had no questions. No expectations. Just the pause, the holding, the understanding that neither would break first. She laughed softly at the thought. You're a hard man to read. Not hard, he said. Quiet. She looked at him. Eyes steady. No mockery. No threat. Just calm. She let herself breathe. The first time in days, maybe weeks. She remembered the world outside, remembered fear, remembered running. Here, she waited. She stayed. Quiet as him. He stood then, moving to the sink. Washing his hands. Water ran. Rinsed. Dripped. She watched the motion. The way he worked didn't invite conversation. Didn't demand explanation. She realized that silence could be protection. Could be a shield as strong as any wall or gun. She let herself feel that. Held it. For a moment, she almost relaxed. Almost. Bathroom's there, he said, pointing. Shower? She shook her head. Not yet. He nodded. Didn't press. Didn't ask why. She could feel trust growing, brittle and fragile. A vow without words. She didn't speak her name again. Didn't need to. It hung between them. Heard once, enough to change everything. He returned to the dresser. Paused. Looked at the badge. Nothing said. She didn't ask. Didn't need to. Space held. Time stretched. They were alone together, yet neither touched. Comfort existed in absence, in the refusal to demand explanation. She realized she could be seen without being known. That was a new feeling. Terrifying. Exhilarating. Night crept closer. Shadows grew across the floor. She moved to the window. Outside, gravel crunched in the distance. Trucks. Eyes. The world pressing. She didn't flinch. Not yet. The house had her. The man had her. Both had limits. She was learning them. The badge waited in the drawer. Authority buried. Threat contained. They were silent, yes, but present. Watching. Waiting. He handed her a glass of water. Clean. Clear. Simple. No question attached. She took it. Hand shook slightly. He didn't notice. Or didn't care. She drank. Felt herself fill with more than water. Strength. Patience. Anger dulled. Fear manageable. She could stay. She would stay. Her thoughts drifted to the threshold. Where she had first stumbled. Blood on wood. Spoken name. The line crossed. Door closed. Shelter given. Cost unknown. Now, the house that didn't ask, and the man who didn't pry, became the new ground. Solid. Unmovable. Temporary. Dangerous. Safe. All at once. He moved to the kitchen, pulled a chair, sat facing her. Distance kept. Eyes calm. No words. She realized she could speak and be ignored. She could speak and it wouldn't matter. She could rest in that quiet. She could breathe. No questions. No judgments. Just being. Minutes passed. Then hours. She shifted. The cut itched. She scratched lightly. He didn't move. Didn't comment. She realized the wound was nothing compared to the weight she carried. The name she had spoken. The world she had fled. The silence here was enough to hold it. Contain it. Maybe even begin to heal it. He finally stood. Hands at his sides. Looked at her. You'll be all right, he said. No warmth. No comfort. Just fact. She nodded. Accepted it. Not trust. Not hope. Acceptance. She could work with that. For now. She went to her room. Changed into the clean shirt. Folded the bloody one carefully. Placed it out of sight. The drawer remained closed. The badge stayed inside. Authority dormant. Safe for now. She lay down. The bed hard. Simple. She closed her eyes. Breath evened. Heart slowed. She could rest. She could wait. Outside, gravel shifted. A vehicle passed. She didn't move. He didn't move. The house held. Time paused. The world pressed at the edges. She stayed. She breathed. Silence stretched between them, strong enough to hold all the words unsaid. Safe enough to let her stay. She could survive tonight. The man who offered shelter, the house that didn't ask, kept her alive. That was all she needed. When sleep finally came, light was far away. She dreamed of thresholds. Doors closing. Names spoken. Choices made. The house listened. Held. Watched. Morning would come. Maybe questions would, too. Maybe not. For now, shelter was enough. That was all. That was everything. She woke before the sun fully hit the windows. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke from last night's stove, and the house felt empty but alive. Quiet creaks from the floorboards reminded her she was not alone. She rolled onto her side, stretched, and caught sight of the dresser she hadn't fully examined. Something drew her to it, a faint curiosity she hadn't felt in days. The drawer slid open easily under her fingers. Inside lay a single item, a badge. Old. Scuffed. Sheriff. Not current, not official, but heavy with meaning. She froze. Blood still tingled along her ribs. Her mind churned. Authority, law, power. All of it, buried here. He appeared in the doorway without sound. Found something? He asked, voice calm. She straightened. You law? He paused. Not a denial, not a confirmation. Not anymore. She picked up the badge carefully, weighing it in her palm. You still carry it? He leaned against the wall. I keep things I bury. She looked at him, dark eyes wary. That badge scares me. He nodded. It should. Her fingers tightened around the cold metal. You scare me? He didn't flinch. Know why? Because you're still here, he said. She swallowed. That quiet, unmovable calm pressed down like a hand. She realized he wasn't waiting for her to explain, wasn't probing her, wasn't even judging. He simply existed. Solid. Still. Watching. Outside, gravel shifted. Tires hummed softly. A truck slowed near the edge of his land, headlights sweeping the wall where she had been standing. She ducked slightly, heart hammering. He didn't move toward her. Didn't warn. Didn't flinch. He simply said, "They're looking." She nodded. I know. Silence fell again, heavy and tense. They waited. Together, apart. The air was taut, a line stretched thin between walls and windows. The truck crept past and the gravel's sound faded. Still, their bodies remained on alert. The house listened with them. She returned the badge to the drawer slowly, closing it with care. You ever think about it? She asked. About what? Law. Responsibility. What it costs. He didn't answer at first. Finally, sometimes. Not often enough. Her stomach tightened. That admission was enough. Enough to know the man had shadows. Enough to know he had a past. Enough to know that if the world pressed too hard, he could bend but not break. That made her pulse slow, her mind calculating. Trust, she reminded herself. Trust. That was all. The air shifted again with sound outside. Gravel, soft at first, then louder, the truck leaving. She didn't breathe until it passed. He didn't react. His gaze remained steady, unreadable, but the tension between them had grown sharper. "You ever scared?" she asked finally. "Not of you," he said. That made her laugh softly, bitterly. Good to know. She realized she had begun to test him, to feel for cracks, to measure danger. He didn't offer them. Only presence. Only silence. Only the weight of a man who had buried more than she could guess. She went to the window and watched the road. Dust floated in the rising sun. No one lingered. No one followed. She exhaled slowly. Turning back, she noticed the badge again. Something about it unsettled her, as if it were a promise, a warning. A reminder that authority never leaves. It hides. It waits. It presses. She glanced at him. He met her eyes briefly and nodded toward the drawer. "Leave it," he said. She did. Slowly, reluctantly. That gesture held more than a warning. It held trust, fragile and weighted. Minutes passed. Neither spoke. She moved to the bed, pulled the sheet around her shoulders, and let her thoughts settle. Names. People. Roads she had run. Memories she hadn't shared. The badge sat in the drawer like a pulse, like a heartbeat buried beneath the house's walls. She realized the danger wasn't just outside. It was the weight of what had been done and what had been ignored. He had been part of it once. She had survived it. Together, in this room, they were both reckoning silently. "You know," she said finally, voice soft, almost testing, "I think they'd recognize it." The badge. The authority. He glanced at her without shifting. "They'd recognize you more." Silence returned. Not awkward, not empty. It pressed. Settled. Held them both in a single, tense space. She felt the pull of it like gravity, heavy and unyielding. She moved closer to the dresser, touched it lightly. Wood cold beneath her fingers. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Regret what?" "Keeping it. Keeping all of it." He shrugged, slow, careful. "Not enough to stop." His words were flat, factual. Not remorseful, not boastful. Just reality. She nodded. Understanding settled in her chest. Actions had consequences. Silence had weight. Both of them carried it now. Outside, the wind shifted. Trees murmured. Gravel crunched faintly. She realized she had been holding her breath without noticing. Now she exhaled slowly. Her fingers itched, wanting to touch the badge again, wanting answers she couldn't ask, wanting clarity that would never come. Instead, she moved back from the dresser, from the badge, from the silent man watching. She had learned enough for now. Enough to survive. Enough to plan. Enough to wait. He didn't speak. He just stood there, leaning against the wall. Calm. Patient. Dangerous. Solid. She studied him, tracing the lines of his face, the set of his jaw, the quiet confidence that told her nothing would move him. Not yet. Not easily. That realization made her chest tighten and pulse race at the same time. They were on the same side, for now. But the world outside, the gravel, the trucks, the watchers, they would press again. She knew it. He knew it. Time stretched thin. She moved to the chair, sat, and pulled her knees up. Hands rested on them. Eyes watched the road through the window. Dust floated in shafts of light. Shadows stretched across the walls. She realized how long it had been since she'd felt a room hold her rather than threaten her. The house didn't ask. He didn't ask. That simple, sharp truth felt dangerous, almost sacred. She let herself breathe. Then the sound came again. A branch against the window, soft at first, then brushing the frame. She froze. He remained still. Watching. Waiting. Silent, but alert. Nothing entered. No one followed. The house absorbed it all. Dust settled. Light shifted. She moved to the bed, lay down, careful not to touch the dresser or the badge, and closed her eyes. The silence became a shield. The badge remained in the drawer, hidden, powerful, alive with history she did not fully understand. He remained a solid presence in the room, a quiet guardian, his eyes scanning the edges of the house and road, waiting for anything that might break the line they had established. She realized she had begun to trust that presence. Fragile. Unspoken. Dangerous in its own way. She drifted toward sleep, the house listening, holding, and protecting. Morning would bring questions. Morning would bring the world pressing again. But for now, the badge stayed buried, the truck was gone, and the quiet man remained steady. She had survived another night. She had a roof, a room, and a man who didn't ask questions. That was enough. That was safety. That was the beginning of something she could not yet name. The sun had risen high enough to cast long, thin shadows across the yard when the sound of a truck grinding over gravel made her chest tighten. She was near the window, watching, alert. Dust swirled behind the vehicle. Two men got out. One smiled too easily, hands loose at his sides. The other didn't smile at all, face hard, eyes calculating. Old family, she thought. Power dressed in flesh. They walked toward the house, slow, deliberate. Her stomach tightened. He appeared behind her, silent. Evening, one of the men said, polite but sharp. You lost? He didn't answer. The air hung thick. She stayed back, behind the doorframe, unseen. Looking for a woman, the smiling one said. A lot of women around, the silent one added. The tension drew tight, like a wire ready to snap. This one runs, the first said. Their voices carried over the yard, heavy with threat. He stepped forward, blocking the doorway without raising his voice. Presence alone held the air. She could feel the heat of it, the weight pressing down. The men stopped. Words hung, unfinished, dangerous. She say her name to you, the smiling one asked. Pause. Long enough to stretch the moment into tension. No, he said. You lying? I ain't done that in years. The quiet one's eyes flicked to her hiding spot. He didn't move. Didn't look away. They didn't know the truth. They wouldn't. Not yet. You know what her family did? The smiling one said, low. I know what you're doing right now, he answered. Calm. Solid. Steel. She stayed in the shadows, chest tight, pulse racing. Careful, the other said. I am, he said simply. They stared at each other. The air smelled of dust and tension and old grudges. Nothing moved. The world outside pressed, but they were safe in that moment, held by his silence and the walls of the house. She could feel the fear in their pause, their hesitation. She recognized the shift. Power knocks politely before it breaks doors. The men had counted on her being alone, scared, exposed. But she wasn't alone. Not here. Not anymore. The line had been drawn. The threshold held. His body a barrier. A wordless shield. She stayed back, watching, learning. Quiet as him. Calculating. Waiting. The first man's smile faltered. She belongs to you? The question was sharp, testing. She belongs to herself, he answered, flat, final. The silence stretched. Gravel shifted under their boots. Dust rose. They weighed the air. Realized something solid, immovable, waited inside that house. They would not touch her, not while he stood there. Not while she remained unseen, silent, calculating. You'll lose everything, the smiling one said. The threat hung in the air. Already lost worse, he said, voice calm. His words carried a weight that made her chest tighten. She could feel the history behind each syllable. Loss. Sacrifice. Survival. The line between life and death, loyalty and betrayal, thinned. The truck's engine hummed faintly. Sun glared against the windshield. Dust settled over it all. "Do it then," the quiet one said finally, voice low. "A challenge. A dare." He didn't move. He only watched. "Watch," he said softly. The words were small, but they carried gravity. She stayed in the back room, breathing shallow, silent, absorbing everything. Learning the rhythm of power, the way it pressed, the way it could be blocked by presence and stillness. She realized she could survive by observing. By waiting. By holding her space. The men left slowly, carefully, turning back only once. Dust rose behind them. Gravel crunched under tires. They didn't speak her name. They described her. That was enough. The world outside was already spreading the story, like a sickness carried on the wind. She held herself still, quiet, letting the house absorb it. The air cleared, the sunlight remained, the silence became a shield again. He came back inside without a word. The door closed behind him. The lock clicked. The threshold held. She stepped out of the shadows slowly, chest tight, pulse steadying. He didn't ask where she had been, didn't check her face for fear. That silence became trust, fragile and solid at once. She realized she had survived more than just the men outside. She had survived herself, her history, her fear. The room smelled faintly of wood and dust. Shadows stretched across the floor. He watched her without speaking. She watched him, understanding his presence had saved her. That he had set the line. That he had been her shield when she had none. She felt something shift. Not love. Not yet. But recognition. Strength. Bond. Unspoken, but heavier than words. She stepped closer to the window, watching the road. Gravel still. Dust settling. The truck gone. No one lingered. She breathed slowly. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Silence pressed around them, but now it was protective. Not threatening. She realized she could stay here. She could wait. Learn. Breathe. And survive. The house held them both. Her name remained safe. Spoken once, enough to bind them together in quiet strength. Time passed. Sun shifted. Shadows lengthened. Dust settled further. She moved to the bed, sat, back straight, eyes alert. He remained a shadow against the wall. Neither spoke. The air was thick but steady. Waiting for nothing. Safe in that silence. She allowed herself to relax slightly, shoulders dropping, but never entirely. Survival demanded watchfulness. Observation. Understanding. She had learned that now. Evening came. Light changed. Dust glowed gold. He moved near the stove, lit a small flame. Warmth flickered. Shadows danced across walls. She sat still, chest rising and falling, mind racing yet calm. The events outside had passed, but the memory pressed. Power never leaves. Authority waits. Men come asking. Women survive. She understood that now. She understood her place in the room, in the house, behind the door, beneath his watch. The night drew closer, heavier. Gravel beyond the yard remained silent. The house absorbed sound, tension, history. She felt herself changing, understanding, learning, becoming. Not yet free, not yet safe, but safer than before. He watched. She observed. They breathed in unison. Time stretched between them, heavy and quiet, holding all the unspoken words. She had survived this encounter. They had survived together. And the badge waited in the drawer, scuffed and silent, a reminder of what had been buried and what might rise again. She glanced at it without touching. Authority, presence, threat. She didn't need it to act. He didn't need it to speak. The room, the house, the threshold held. They could wait. They could survive. They could endure. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the quiet settle. The air pressed down, but now it was protective. She understood the rules now. The house, the man, the threshold, they set boundaries. He didn't ask questions. He didn't press. He simply existed, solid, immovable, like a wall she could hide behind or lean on. That realization made her chest tighten and pulse faster at the same time. She had survived streets, trucks, threats, whispers. Now, she survived him. Somehow, that mattered. Somehow, it meant something. She stepped forward one morning, the air still heavy with dust and warmth from the sun spilling through the windows. He sat at the table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, eyes steady. No words. No judgment. She stared at him a long moment. Then, marry me. The words were sharp, precise. No flourish. No pleading. Survival disguised as a proposal. He blinked, slow. Silence stretched. His jaw tightened. No, he said finally. She nodded, expected. I wasn't asking pretty, she said. He studied her. Calm. Cold. Careful. You don't even know me. I know enough, she said, voice even. The weight of it hung between them. The sun moved across the floorboards. Shadows lengthened. Dust floated. He didn't move. Didn't answer. The moment waited, balanced on the edge of something sharp. She stepped closer. Say it. They won't touch a wife, she said. He met her eyes, unflinching. They touch wives all the time, he said. The air cracked around that. She smiled faintly. Not yours. Long silence. Neither moved. Breath even. Her pulse high. The room held. She studied him. Solid. Silent. Dangerous in ways she hadn't yet measured. She realized the choice was hers. Always hers. Not about love. Not about feelings. About survival. About staking claim. About drawing lines no one else could cross. About finding safety in a world that offered little. This ain't love, he said finally. Calm. Truthful. Flat. She didn't flinch. It might become respect, she said. He studied her again. Let her words land. The shift in the room was subtle but sharp, like dust falling through a sunbeam. Respect could be enough. For now, it had to be. That was the lesson she carried from the streets, the trucks, the threats outside. Survival first. Everything else later. That enough, she asked. For now, he answered. Words minimal. Weight maximal. The air felt thick, heavy with implication. She moved to the window, letting sunlight brush her face. Warm. Safe. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel it. The house held. The man held. Boundaries clear. Lines drawn. She could stay. She could breathe. She could endure. He rose slowly and walked over, holding a small box in one hand. Inside, a simple ring. Not fancy. Not flashy. Weaponized symbol, she thought. Claim. Protection. Defense. She took it. Fingers brushing his briefly. He didn't react. Just presence. Solid. He didn't need to speak. She slid the ring on her finger, testing the fit. Click. Sound sharp in the quiet room. Claim sealed. Vow made. Not romance. Not love. Survival. Safety. Line drawn. They sat side by side then, not touching, watching the dust float in the sunlight. Morning pressed through the window, pale and sharp. Breath even. Time stretched, fragile and heavy. She realized she could trust the silence between them. He realized she could hold her own. Neither needed to speak more. The air held enough. Boundaries clear. Vow made. Lines drawn. Outside, gravel shifted faintly. Dust rose and fell. The world pressed at the edges, but here, the house, the man, the ring, they set limits. She could move within them. She could rest. She could endure. Protection came in small doses. Silence, presence, the click of metal on skin. That was enough. That was survival. That was the first step toward something more, something slow, something real. She exhaled slowly. Chest tight, pulse still fast. She studied him. Solid. Calm. Dangerous. But reliable. The weight of his watchful eyes gave her space to breathe, to think, to plan. She had survived outside. She would survive here. She would survive with him. That understanding settled over her like a shield, fragile and sharp. He broke the silence finally. You sure? Voice quiet, low, testing. I am, she said. Not because she had to be. Because she wanted to be. Because the world outside had taken so much already. Because claiming what little she could mattered. Because she had survived the streets, the trucks, the men asking for her. This was hers. This small corner, this fragile line. Time passed. Dust glowed in shafts of sun. The room felt solid, alive, protective. The ring on her finger felt heavy with meaning. He sat back, calm, silent. The lines drawn, boundaries set. Survival clear. No one would breach this line. Not today. Not tomorrow. She understood the rhythm. The balance. The rules. And then she moved, just slightly, toward him. Not close enough to touch. Not yet. But close enough to signal the shift. She understood the power between them, the weight of presence, the unspoken contract. Not love. Not yet. Respect. Survival. Boundaries drawn. She held it carefully, like a fragile weapon. A shield. A line no one could cross. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Dust floated. Gravel stayed still. They didn't speak. Breath even. Presence shared. Silence stretched, protective, heavy, alive. She realized the vow had been made. Ring on finger. Line drawn. Survival secured. Morning pressed in. They could endure the day. They could endure each other. They could endure what came next. No words necessary. Not yet. Not now. The house held them. He held them. She held herself. That was enough. That had to be enough. And for the first time in days, maybe weeks, she allowed herself to feel something light in the chest, not hope. Not love. But the faintest pulse of control. Of survival. Of life reclaimed, fragile but unbroken. Night pressed heavy against the windows, the house quiet except for the faint creak of wood settling. She sat on the edge of the bed, ring warm on her finger, pulse steadying, but her mind ran in loops she hadn't faced in years. He stood by the stove, shadows cutting across his face. The badge lay buried in the drawer, silent. She finally spoke. You knew, she said. His eyes lifted, meeting hers without a word. The tension stretched between them, thick, almost physical. Not all of it, he said finally. Enough, she asked. He didn't answer directly. Silence filled the room. She could feel the weight of every story left untold, every act ignored, every look turned away. I was young, he said quietly. So was my mother, she answered. Pain laced the words, soft but heavy. Her voice wavered. I'm sorry. She flinched when he shook his head. Don't say that. Confusion and anger flickered inside her. Why? Say what you'll do now. A beat of silence. She measured him, measured herself. I'll finish what I didn't, he said. The words pressed against her chest. Fear, guilt, inherited silence, old family curses, all of it pressed into the corners of the room. That'll cost you, she said, tone sharp. He exhaled slowly. Already has. She studied him. The calm, the weight, the presence, it carried something dangerous, something necessary. She realized she could trust him with this. She realized she had to. She rose, moving closer to the window. Outside, shadows pressed against the land, but the house held. The man held. She had her place now, behind the threshold, but no longer hiding entirely. She took a deep breath, and the story came out, careful, deliberate, each word measured. Land stolen, women erased, bones hidden in wells, memories stacked like corpses in old houses. She didn't flinch. She could feel the gravity of her words, the weight pressing on them both, heavy as blood and dust. He listened. Nothing escaped his face. His body didn't move, didn't lean, didn't signal anything. But she felt the understanding in him, the recognition. His silence held more than any answer could. When she finished, she let her head drop back, staring at the ceiling. She expected anger. Disbelief. Hesitation. He didn't offer any of that. He simply said, I looked away once. Shock pressed through her. She had assumed he had always been the shield, the constant. But he had faltered. He had failed. The world outside had been carried in on silence and avoidance. That realization made her chest tighten, pulse spike. She took a step toward him. You knew, she said again, softly. He nodded. Not all. Enough. Another pause. Tension thickened like smoke in the room. You understand why I hid it? She asked. He tilted his head slightly. Yes. The acknowledgement alone cut deeper than any argument. Silence settled again. She felt it pressing against her chest, heavy with grief, rage, and memory. I need you to finish it, she said finally, voice steady. He didn't answer. His eyes told her everything. Do it, she said again. Finish what should have been done. The badge in the drawer seemed to pulse with the weight of the conversation, a relic of authority and failure, memory and silence. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of dust and distant road. She placed her hand over the ring. Metal cool against skin. Claim. Vow. Weapon. Shield. She realized that this house, this man, this space, was a crucible. Every story, every secret, every sin would be tested here. He walked slowly across the room, stopped near the dresser, hand hovering over the badge. Did he consider picking it up? She didn't know. Didn't ask. What mattered was that he stood there, solid, present, ready. And she, for the first time, didn't flinch. Didn't back away. They had crossed thresholds together now. Words had been spoken. Names reclaimed. Secrets laid bare. And still, the house remained standing, waiting, holding. You're not afraid, he said finally, voice low. Afraid? She shook her head. Of what's coming? No. Afraid of what's past. That made him pause. Past kills, he said softly. She met his eyes. Then we bury it. The air between them vibrated with meaning. Not casual. Not light. Heavy. Necessary. Survival, justice, revenge, protection all folded into the quiet of that room. She moved toward him, close enough to be felt but not touched. What will you do? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. Just watched her, presence solid, waiting for the right moment. Then, I'll finish it. But we do it our way. Our way, she echoed. She felt the weight of the words. Choice. Power. Alignment. She was no longer a passive player. She had stake. Claim. Authority. The house seemed to hum in response. Dust floated in the shafts of light from the windows. Shadows pressed at the corners but didn't enter. Bones buried. Secrets hidden. Authority held in the drawer. The air carried a mix of fear, anticipation, and unspoken understanding. She realized the world outside could try again. Trucks, men, whispers. But inside, lines had been drawn. Names spoken. Vows made. She would not be invisible. She would not run. He stepped closer, finally. Not to touch. Not to close the distance. But to exist in the space, solid, immovable. "We start soon," he said. Words small, heavy. She nodded. "I'm ready," she said, feeling the tremor in her chest, the adrenaline beneath her skin, the calm beneath her fear. It would cost them both. Everything. But the cost was already paid in silence, in survival, in names spoken, in thresholds crossed. She placed her hand fully over the ring. Click. The sound rang clear in the room. Claim made. Power asserted. Safety sealed. She met his eyes. He nodded. No words necessary. They had crossed into something irreversible now. Lines drawn. Vows sealed. Names reclaimed. The house absorbed it all, heavy and quiet. Outside, the world waited. Inside, they were ready. Night deepened. Shadows pressed longer, dust settled further, air thick with the weight of unspoken futures. She lay back on the bed, pulse steady, hands resting on the ring. He stood by the window, presence solid. Watchful. Silent. Protective. The badge in the drawer waited. Authority buried but alive. Names spoken. Secrets laid bare. Lines drawn. Threshold held. Survival ensured. The room was quiet, but not empty. Not anymore. Memory, grief, inheritance, justice, they pressed on the walls, pressed into the air, pressed into them both. And for the first time since she had run, she felt the faintest spark of control, fragile but unbroken. She could face the world outside. She could face the men who came asking. She could face the weight of her own name. She could survive. They could survive. Smoke pressed against the edges of the house before the first flame took hold. She watched from the doorway, ring heavy on her finger, fingers tight around the latch. The fire wasn't loud at first, just a hiss, a curl of smoke rising from the back of the property where old records and ledgers burned. The house behind her remained quiet, walls absorbing heat, shadows stretching across floorboards. He stood beside her, calm, watching, hands empty but presence heavy. "You started this," she said, voice sharp, steady. He didn't answer immediately. "No. You just ignored it," he finally said. The words landed between them. Simple. Flat. True. She glanced at the flames, bright against the darkened edge of the trees. The well loomed nearby, filled with bones, silent witnesses. She felt the weight of it all, of the past pressing up through earth and smoke. "She belongs to you," someone called from a distance, voice harsh, a shadow near the road. The smoke obscured shapes. "She belongs to herself," he answered, calm as stone. She felt the truth in that line. Not claiming her. Not controlling her. But protecting, shielding, witnessing. The world outside had no power here. Not while he stood solid. Not while she chose to stand beside him. "You'll lose everything," a voice hissed, distant, threatening. "Already lost worse," he said, voice low. She felt the pulse of heat against her skin, the crackle of fire in her ears. Dust floated in the sunlight, turning gold in smoke. Every shadow stretched longer, every sound sharper. She stepped forward, finally, away from the doorway. Not behind him anymore. Visible. Present. She was no longer hiding. "Do it then," another voice demanded, closer now. The match struck in his hand. Flame met paper. Records, old deeds, proof of theft and lies, burned. The fire answered what words could not. She stepped closer to the well, peering into darkness. Bones pressed against each other in silent testament. Her chest tightened. She didn't flinch. Not now. Not ever. She had seen too much. She had survived. You started this, the first voice came again, accusing, shaking with the weight of history. No, she said finally, voice calm but hard. You just ignored it. He looked at her briefly, acknowledging. Their bond had changed. Silent understanding, forged in past secrets, thresholds crossed, names spoken. She felt the weight of her ring, of the vow, of the threshold itself. Protection, claim, authority, it all pressed around her now. The fire roared higher, casting orange and gold across the edges of the property. Ash floated like slow snow. Shadows moved over walls and floor. Gravel shifted far off. Trucks idled, men watched, but nothing moved them. She stood fully in the open now. No hiding. No leaning. Present. Seen. Solid. Alive. She felt the power of it, not in her fists, not in her voice, but in her stance, in her visibility, in the fire consuming the proofs of injustice. You belong to yourself, he repeated. She nodded. Breath even. Heart racing, yes, but not from fear. From presence. From recognition. From the knowledge that she had survived the streets, the trucks, the whispers, the threats. And now she survived here, visible, unshielded, claiming what was hers. He had taught her the rhythm of boundaries, silence, presence. Fire became their witness. Smoke their testament. Hands rested lightly on the edge of the well. She peered down into darkness. Bones glinted faintly, pale against black. Every whisper, every lie, every erased name pressed up to the surface. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. The fire answered the questions they couldn't speak aloud. The past pressed in. The world pressed in. But she was no longer hiding. Not behind him. Not behind thresholds. Not behind walls.